Well, facing mounting criticism over the U.S. role in Libya, President Obama explained America's mission last night.
We have intervened to stop a massacre. When our interests and values are at stake, we have a responsibility to act.
The president said he wants Muammar Gaddafi out of power, but emphasized the UN-authorized mission is about enforcing a no-fly zone, not removing Gaddafi by force.
There is no question that Libya and the world would be better off with Gaddafi out of power. I, along with many other world leaders, have embraced that goal and will actively pursue it through non-military means.
Criticism this morning, though. Not everyone liked the president's outlook. Lawmakers firing back, urging for a tougher stance against Gaddafi.
If we tell Gaddafi, don't worry, you're not going to be removed by force, I think that that's very encouraging to Gaddafi.
The president's speech is illogical. I mean, if you were grading this on a Greek logic exam, you'd give it an F. I mean, the speech contradicts itself.
The president says NATO will take over full control of the mission on Wednesday, and perfect timing to bring in John Dadian. Reaction to the president's speech on Libya split along party lines, John.
Right. John Dadian joining us now. Thanks so much for being here. You know, the president made his case for being in Libya, but of course we just heard Senator John McCain criticizing the president's speech because, you know, he said basically this was comforting for Gaddafi. What's your thoughts on that?
The purpose of his speech was supposed to clarify what our position is. And when I was hearing it, I remembered a phrase my dad used to say, clear as mud. Really, I do agree with Giuliani that it was contradictory, and a lot of it didn't make sense. And more importantly, I think some of the content is going to come back to haunt him.
Do you fear that, or not fear, but do you see some double talk in what was said last night? If we're talking about contradictions, what would those contradictions specifically be?
Here's a statement. The president does not have power under the Constitution to unilaterally authorize a military attack in a situation that does not involve stopping an actual or imminent threat to the nation. That was said by Barack Obama in 2007. That is the contradiction.
Right.
The candidate that was the peace candidate now is a three-war candidate.
Right. You know, he sounded a lot like President Bush. And, you know, there's the fear about how long we were in Iraq during the first Desert Storm when we were there. And so he didn't have a clear answer as to how long we would be there.
An old trick of mine is one of the best ways that I analyze speeches. It's important to listen to what he says, but more importantly to what he's not saying. And what he didn't say is how long we're going to be in there. He says we're handing it off to NATO, but that doesn't say anything about how long our involvement is.
You know, the headline we're saying here is quick to criticize. Oftentimes in situations, particularly with this president, John, people are being so quick to criticize and so quick to, rather than let the process play out, they're immediately responding to what he's saying instead of maybe taking a longer form view. Is that good for the country? Do we need to be more thoughtful in long form in how we criticize, because we're just jumping on it right away?
That's an excellent point, Jeff, but here's what I think the difference is in this particular situation. What you're seeing before the speech, and I think continuing even the criticism after speech, is you're not seeing it coming from the normal quarters. You're not seeing it just break down on partisan lines. You're not seeing it just come down from his critics. A lot of his normal supporters, what he's very concerned about is protecting, to use a military term, his flank, his left flank, politically coming up on the 2012 election. You'll notice, I mean, Dennis Kucinich, former presidential candidate, currently a very liberal congressman, is calling for his impeachment. Many of the Democrats. What I thought was interesting, which again, I've used the phrase, I think some of his words are going to come back to haunt him. He said in his speech that he consulted with the leadership of Congress. Well, it's not the leadership of Congress that can declare war. It's the Congress itself. That has really ruffled a lot of feathers of some of the leadership, might be committee chairman, but not the top leadership.
And even if you liked what he said, you know, a lot of people are saying he should have done this speech earlier and he should have been quicker and more decisive, but that wasn't the case.
And that's been one of his criticisms throughout his administration, is they do kind of plod along a little bit, and then when they react, and again, I was very concerned with some of the content. This president, normally, I've been analyzing him now since he became president, normally, you know, you say it's a good speech or bad speech. What I've seen consistently is, I think his delivery on almost all of his speeches have been between a 9 and 10 on the scale. The content has been terrible. Starting with his inaugural speech, where he made a couple flubs in his inaugural speech of all things, and then some of the things I pointed out here is you got to pay attention to that content. content, because those words stay forever.
Yeah, and you even talk about handing power over to NATO. I mean, let's be honest. I mean, we're in charge of NATO.
That's exactly right. And again, although I don't always agree.
Unprecedented, though. NATO has handled things before as the leader. World War II, for example, NATO was in charge in a lot of issues, much like they are now.
I think that's a little bit of a stretch because NATO has kind of grown over the years. I would say that was a little completely different in World War II. World War II was different. They had allied powers, actually.
Right. Okay. Thanks so much for joining us and talking about this.
Thank you, John. Appreciate your time. For more information, go to Sandiego6.com. You can click on Hot Topics. And now it is time.